Season 2. Okay, wait. How do I get you onto the edge of the screen? Hang on a second. I gotta set this
I'm
in
gonna
a way
look
that
bad
is.
on the camera no matter where you put it. I'm more just curious.
Well, now this is
I
like
just more care about my particular anxiety.
weird centering. I mean, if I do this now, you're just sort of like. It's a really weird angle.
You can cut me out of the picture too if it makes it.
Well, I mean,
easier.
this is a more natural kind of angle to me.
I'm always going to be out of focus.
You're more, yeah. There's that. Is this okay with you?
I'm fine with this.
Okay. What were we in the middle of? Because until people show up and ask questions, it's just another open live stream. And do you have a way to set an alarm for 30 minutes? Because now normally I'd use my phone.
Oh.
Well, someone's here already. Hey, Internet, it's Sarah. This is Alexandra. We are in the middle of... Let me flip this around for a second.
Echo, alert me in 30 minutes.
30 minutes, starting now.
Nice.
Technology.
Freeze frame from season 1, episode 1 of Star Trek Discovery. We did get a late start. We were hoping to be done with the first 2 episodes by now and then cut into this. But we also, let me turn this around again, have this wonderful spread of pizza. There's actually pizza under here as well. Those are some tater tot kind of things over there.
They're called K-Papas.
K-Papas?
K-Papas.
K-Papas.
Sorry, that wasn't me correcting you. I was repeating back in a call.
Oh my god, are those sheep?
Style. They're sheep. This is my sheep blanket. This is my sheep blanket that I've had since I was a little kid.
Aww.
Yeah, and it's the black sheep. Yeah. My family believed that it was actually worthwhile to stand out and be different.
Nice. A can of Coke and some kind of cappuccino thing. So, quite comfortable when it comes to food support and things like that today. And we're here. So, we're both trans, which is why I said you'll have twice the trans today of your regular strength Ask Sarah live stream. And as usual, I'll like point out that all of my live streams technically are AMAs. They're just not so directed. They're not so like explicitly like, hey, you can ask me stuff. Like that's actually why we're here right now. And the only difference from most of my live streams with this one, even in the general format, is that I try to keep it to about a half hour, unless there's like a really good conversation going. But today, since we're in the middle of trying to do this massive like 10+ hour Star Trek marathon,
It might be like 12 hours.
yeah, we are gonna, cause yeah, we're pausing for food and stuff like that. We're gonna do our best to cut it with that half hour mark. So if you got questions about trans stuff, I'm also diagnosed autistic. You're not diagnosed autistic, but we've been talking a lot about this stuff about. You had a way to put it the other day in
A friend of mine said that if I'm not on the spectrum, I'm spectrum adjacent.
Okay, so the thing is, that reminds me of what Jen said when we were together way back when. She just came to me one day and said, I know you're not autistic, you haven't been diagnosed with it or anything, but I notice inside myself that if I treat you as though you are, I feel much better, and it's a lot easier for both of us. We just,
It's a really interesting way to have someone try it.
And
affirm your identity.
Well, here's my favorite part about this to look back on and be like, this is the most autistic response possible. Do you know what I said?
Mm-mm.
Can you imagine what the most autistic response possible to that would be?
That seems logical.
Basically. I said, okay. And that was it. I didn't have any other... I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So, questions about my particular flavor of autism, or Alexandra's experience of being that has people say, you're driving by the neighborhood. Like you're thinking of moving in. Still some details to work on. Or whatever. But that's it. Or Star Trek. Are you like I can't remember your Star Trek thing. You're like a big long-term whole franchise.
I have.
But not a Trekkie. Not like a
Oh
convention.
no, I'm totally a Trekkie.
You are a Trekkie.
I used to go to conventions. Like my aunt took me to the very first convention I went to. Was like a Creation Star Trek Next Gen con. It was where
When did you stop and why?
Well, I've never been much of a con goer,
okay.
But in terms of Trek, it's just been the drought of good Trek material. Because I'm a Trekkie, but I'm also very opinionated.
Okay, so part of the reason we're watching this is totally on topic, is because we got, what episode is it that you stopped on, like 6 or something?
I think it was 10 or 11.
10?
Yeah.
10 or 11?
There's 15 episodes in the season.
What? I thought there's 13. Is there 15?
I think there's 15.
Okay.
And the thing that killed me was in episode 10.
Okay.
So, actually, it's been out forever, and I mean...
Is this a character
spoilers?
death? Is that what's in
Yeah,
there?
it's the... Bury your queers.
Okay.
That's really what it came down to.
What's that then? For some reason I thought like that was in 7 or 8.
Well, still, that was the
Okay.
point at which I'm like... The show had trod on my nerves, and
Okay.
I stopped.
So part of the reason there's 2 people that have kind of like talked you back into this. One is another friend of yours said something, it's great, right? And then I came from the perspective of, as a queer person who does acting, had I been cast in this role of this character who gets killed off, having seen the whole first season, I was like, I would be leaping with joy and just crying constantly to have been cast, to have the opportunity to play that, to be that part of this world, right? I think it's fantastic, personally. And I get completely what you're saying, but this doesn't feel... I don't know how to express this. It doesn't feel like Bury Your Queers. It feels like this is the storyline, and then later on at some point we're like, well, what if these characters are gay? Or something like that. You know what I mean?
I think one of the things that bugs me about it, like, I do like the fact that the filmmakers specifically said their gay relationship is the love story of the season. Like, it is the great epic love story in the background of what's going on. And up until the point I was done watching, I would say I agree with that sentiment. That said, I'm also really irritated because it did not feel like they did the character good justice in the storyline when they chose to do it, because he had to hold on to an idiot ball for them to build the scene.
But there's a lot of this, that's classic Trek. Like, even the whole thing where they've got mud, that episode is just like an annoying fucking episode.
Right.
It's like, I feel like part of the function of that kind of episode is to remind you.
That was one of the episodes I actually really liked.
Okay.
Because it showed off the tenacity of the crew. It was weird timey-wimey bullshit, but also it really highlighted how scummy of a person Mudd was in a way that the original series did not set up. Like, he was a horrible person in the original series.
He was more of a scamp.
Exactly.
He wasn't in the original. They didn't really explore what are the actual consequences of his behavior.
Right. Exactly.
And this very deeply does.
In this one, though, you're like, no, if someone's willing to slaughter people in horrible various ways, and it's like, oh, well, I've got a time reset device, so that makes it okay. It's like, that's not how it works.
That's like, why I love Burnham's response, and I realize that this is acting all that, but just her like staring him down while she eats the thing.
Yeah.
Just fucking like.
Yeah.
Like, I can do this in a way that you think you're hard here doing this over and over. Try me. I will do this every fucking time, and just staring at him while you're experiencing all that is just like.
There are not a lot of structural things about Discovery that I can say that I disliked. In terms of, like, some of the dialogue a little early on is a little shaky. Like, a lot of the sequences in this episode where Burnham and Saru interact are things like, you've been serving together for 7 years.
Yeah.
This dialogue makes it sound like you met yesterday.
Yes. But there's a lot of that. But that's classic first episode or two of any of these shows.
Right.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is like just like dripping with that the first episode
Agents of
or
S.H.I.E.L.D.
two.
gets by on its name. That's the thing that bugged me about the first couple of seasons, and what ultimately killed my interest in the show.
I think they take too long doing what it feels like they're sort of trying to ease you into the real Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which starts like late 3 and all of 4.
Right.
But it's like you're releasing it concurrently with these big fuck off whiz bang movies that like we already there, right? Like, I already get it.
Yeah, it's like the whole idea in the first season where people are like, "Oh, we don't know if S.H.I.E.L.D. are good guys," and it's like, no, we know S.H.I.E.L.D. are good guys. If Coulson shows up, you're like, fucking yeah, someone's showing up to save the day. But they had this whole weird subtext in the first season of, ooh, S.H.I.E.L.D. is this mysterious organization. Nobody can tell if you're really good people or not. It's
it's the G-Men in suits thing, right?
Yeah, and it's like they built up the Marvel Universe in a way that it just didn't feel like it worked very well. Like, it wasn't until the Hydra reveal in Winter Soldier where I was like, yeah, now people have a really good reason to say, holy shit, S.H.I.E.L.D. might be terribly, terribly fucking evil.
But the thing is, the whole setup, the whole lead up to that is like they're sort of drifting that way for a long time anyway. So people have, it's like they're talking like you're distrusted. Like the setup at the beginning with Skye being like the men in suits, blah blah blah
Right.
kind of thing. Like they're talking about that being already the case, and that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s work.
Right.
Like the thing that frustrates Coulson is like he's trying to actually show up and actually help these people, but then he's part of this apparatus that's like, yeah, we're helping.
I feel like the difficulty is all of the work they built into the universe.
Mhm.
That Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the beginning was disjointed from it, because when we get to Avengers and Coulson fucking dies, I'm like, that's it. S.H.I.E.L.D. are clearly good guys. They're clearly on the right side. Granted, they're doing some things dumb, but I mean, they're there supporting the Avengers. So clearly, and I mean, look at Fury. He's got superiors that tell him to do something that is phenomenally stupid and incredibly abominably immoral. And his solution is, no, I'm going to leave it up to these heroes that I went and tried to help bring together
Right.
just to save us from these kind of situations.
Right.
So he was already the head of an organization who was like bucking the trend of authoritarianism by saying, I'm going to do the right thing, not the thing that my superiors tell me to do.
Right.
So then when you go from that into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's like you just unwind all of that emotion that just got built up from me watching the Avengers. And then we're not back to being synced up until we finish Winter Soldier. There's one shot in, I think, the second season of S.H.I.E.L.D. where they steal a Quinjet
Uh-huh.
because they need something that can use stealth.
Uh-huh.
And they don't have the bus, and the bus isn't, is broken or isn't working anymore or something like that. And it's that implication of they're back to being those rebellious heroes. You know, where fucking May rides off in a motorcycle,
Right.
getting shot at by people, while the rest of the heroes take off in the jet, which then cloaks and flies away, and the whole feeling it builds up is this sense that, you know, they have finally restored the scales to balance. People have outed S.H.I.E.L.D. as a bunch of Hydra, and now they're getting back to the hard work of actually going and doing the hero job.
Right.
And what the fuck did I just say for the last 4 minutes?
Well, but that goes into what season 3 and 4 is. This is what I was saying. Is like
Right.
so the first two seasons are really like TV background exploration of all the stuff that sort of like
Yeah.
creates a sort of richer backdrop for Civil War.
By the way, how do we
Soldier.
tell if someone's asked a question?
It'll pop up here.
Okay. Sorry.
And it tells me is that people are watching, but I think it only tells me someone's watching if I'm also personal Facebook friends with them.
Oh, okay.
Because this is the first alert that's popped up of someone with their name. The rest of the time, it just had the number. The number's also not accurate. I'm not sure how it pulls that and checks that, but I've had it say nobody's watching, and then something like 3 comments from 3 different people over, and I'm like, oh, fuck. So I just, if it's on, I assume there's, there could be 50 people watching.
Leave it up to Facebook to have good tech.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing I was talking about. Seasons 3 and 4 especially, 4 feels like the real beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to me, because it feels like a real superhero show at that
Right.
point.
That's the point at which they've, she's fully become Quake. They're actually fighting missions. They start putting together the team.
Yeah. The thing is, in
God.
season 4, they bring in Ghost Rider. You bring in Ghost Rider in season
yeah.
1, that's too much.
Right.
It doesn't fit in, doesn't make sense. Right? Like the early season 1, they're like,
Isn't the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider too?
yes.
Yeah.
He's good.
That's awesome.
There's so much great stuff in season 4.
But now all the
Agents of
stuff I
S.H.I.E.L.D.
keep seeing in
Season 5?
yeah, it's like
I've seen 0 about it. I caught a tiny bit of text at the beginning of the Netflix thing of saying here's season 5.
I saw at least one picture of a blown up planet. It looked like time travel was involved in some fashion.
They maybe what they're doing is they're going to tie it into Infinity War. This is going to be more of the same thing. They're backdropping it.
Infinity War sucked.
I didn't like Infinity War.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Transformers animated movie. It felt like a way to sell related products.
Ugh,
It didn't feel like
you're killing me. I love Transformers.
Does Prime die? I love that in the commercial. They show him kind of being disintegrated. They're like, does Prime die? But I'm like, 8 or whatever. I'm like, does Prime die? Fuck, I don't know.
I was hit by that really hard when I saw it, and that movie. Well, yeah, and the music.
Jared loves that song.
I still
so
have
much.
the soundtrack, and I play it on a regular basis. That hit me.
Just trans girly things. I don't know.
I really liked Optimus. He was so... Because freedom is the right of all sentient beings. You know?
He does have some good lines. Did you see this? Did you see this panel that was floating on Facebook the other day? It's like comic book panels out of context or something.
Mm-mm.
And he says something like, my name is Optimus Prime, and my friend Megatron something said blah blah blah. And it was like anytime someone is in power, you have 3 questions you must ask them. And I don't remember what they are, but it's clear that they're recasting Megatron from this sort of just like, he's evil, he wants to take over the world. That's as far as we go. To essentially like a Magneto type of a militant, a militarized social justice person.
We're doing a live Facebook theme.
Yeah, this is the Ask Sarah. I can cut you in if you like. Usually the live streams on my page are just here's what's happening in my actual world in my life. So this is
David.
Yay. I actually don't. I've said this is Alexandra already. I don't remember. I guess, but I also hyped this up and was like, this Ask Sarah will include Alexandra. We're not. For all I'm asking for questions, I almost never get any. The very first one I had people ask me who do you prefer, Kirk or Picard? And I was like, sure. I love this because it's any question.
How can you ask that kind of a question?
It's actually much more relevant of a question now than it has ever been in the past because both have had time to bake, and there's the presence of those virtues of each, right? So
sure.
So Kirk obviously was the super masculine '60s icon or whatever. And then Picard was the thinking man, the one that had
it's kind of a Renaissance
lot more.
man.
Perfect.
But also
A bit
Picard
more
himself
well-rounded.
was very aristocratic.
Yes.
He was very much that symphony performance in 10 forward kind of thing. And Kirk was a kind of a bookish nerd. I know. He got his shirt off a lot and he did a lot of fighting, but McCoy got him an old book and a pair of glasses for his birthday present because he knew Kirk would absolutely love it.
So out of the entire tome of Star Trek that contains the Kirk character,
Kirk's also the strongest moral philosophizer in the series.
4.5 minutes out of all of that book, all that body of work.
Kirk is also the strongest moral philosopher in all of Star Trek. A lot of them get
it's
really
white and
good
black,
moments.
Though. It's white and black. Kirk's
that's
philosophy.
the big one.
Kirk's philosophy was black and white. It was just that. It was, this is correct, this is incorrect, this is what must be done, this is how we're going to do it, this is why we can't do this thing.
But they kept bringing up the important points where that actually all worked. He would say things like, look at these two people who are functionally biologically identical. The ones where they're split down the middle, they're black on one side and white on the other. Specifically so that he could say, yes, we believed in horrible, stupid bullshit like this ourselves, and we had to work to overcome it. And he's also the captain that has gotten to stand up to the most Nazis, I think.
There weren't Nazis in any other presence of anything.
Well, wasn't it the...
Well, if you're going to pull something from Enterprise, you could say that they traveled to the Stone Age, and I wouldn't know it. So I've never seen an episode of Enterprise, and only 4 episodes of Voyager.
My point being that Kirk is an excellent character, and he is definitely one of the morally strongest choices in terms of a
right,
captain.
but that doesn't answer her question. The
Which,
question
Kirk
goes to
or
her,
Picard?
which is actually, what is the exact question?
It was basically
favorite?
which is your captain essentially? Who's your Star Trek iconic captain?
Yeah, my captain, obviously, Shatner. They're only because that's what I grew up on. That was my first exposure. But as an adult, I can look back and see the virtues of Picard being a thinking man.
Picard was amazing. The episode where there's a witch trial episode where basically he has to defend a half Romulan Starfleet officer.
Yeah, I just came here to steal food. I don't want to have a philosophical conversation. I don't want you to dictate back to me episodes that I've seen.
My point is that I absolutely love some of the stuff Picard got to do, and he was definitely right there. But then again, I also really liked Avery Brooks playing Cisco, and Janeway was awesome, despite the fact that Voyager just sucked.
What?
Cisco was compromised. So,
First of all,
He wasn't compromised. He was
a leader.
He was compromised. Actually, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Like, it's a running theme through his character in the first season that the death of his wife and the trauma that left on him and Jake was a very significant hurdle for them to get over.
He was a leader, and he was he was definitely a military presence, but yeah, I mean,
he grew spiritually. That's one of the more interesting things about his character. That by the end of his exit from the series, he's actually accepted his role as a greater.
Whoa, hey,
entity.
I have not in the middle of watching this actually. I realize that it's 20 years on.
Oh,
I'm still in the
crap,
middle of
you're
watching.
Still going through.
I'm like in season
Okay.
5.
Spoilers. I didn't know he left the series. I assumed he was there till the end.
No, he was there until the end. It's just that the end of his storyline is very spiritual.
Great.
So,
Well, what's her face? Nana Visitor's character. She got spiritual too. So how far are you still like on the first episode of the?
Discovery.
we're partway
Yeah,
through.
because we wanted to stop 5 minutes before we started this, so we got.
We
as
just had a
far as
good
we
pause
could.
point. It was sort of where they would be airing a commercial.
Yeah, we got like 20 minutes. In.
So you're probably not even going to get to the point where I can step in.
Oh yeah, well, we will, but it won't be until like 10 o'clock. Sorry.
We'll send you an email. Wherever you are,
Once I'm done watching it, I will totally be happy to watch it again.
I also will be happy to watch it again. I fucking love this show. This is the only Star Trek show I have ever seen where after every episode, as they were coming out, but after I watched every new episode, I was totally down to rewatch the entire thing from the beginning, and I actually did that once or twice.
I did that with Next Gen because it was new and now when I saw it the first time, so I think that's probably why.
I just watched Next Gen all the way through,
Really?
within the last year or so.
Station?
Take the good with the bad. Well, I mean, were you even alive when Next Gen came out?
Yes.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
well, okay. I don't want to.
I think I was 7 when it came out.
Okay. Well, all right. Alive, yes, but not necessarily.
It was very significant to my youth.
And plus, it came out in like '89, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then I was 10.
10, yeah. Almost surely. So I came up here to steal food. Stand back, or you'll lose an arm.
There's those. What are they called?
If you want to,
K-pops.
yeah.
Look, everybody here.
I got plenty of those. There's a couple of mozzarella sticks left, but they're obviously a little cold.
Here's
Like
the. Oh yeah.
A mott stick. And
Yeah. Help yourself.
I'll leave that.
Actually, you can have this one.
And then I'll take this one.
Okay.
And then I'll take a cheese stick.
This is a white sauce pizza in here. Mushroom, onion,
Over here, the meat
bacon,
is
and
bacon.
sausage.
Over there, the meat is sausage.
One of Alexandra's gross concoctions.
Yeah, clearly.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Here's some further insight for me onto the Kirk and Picard thing. Is that looking back, especially listening to this conversation again too, I realized that Kirk was sort of this idea of the kind of guy I was supposed to try to make myself into, whereas Picard is the dad that I never had, who helps me actually just further explore and find and enjoy myself.
I can agree with that sentiment.
And so I think that's a big part of what informs my understanding of, or my sense of Picard being like my captain. Even though I grew up watching Kirk and watching the old Star Trek, and I have a lot of like positive feeling for it, that there's so much about, like, even within my own head, I talk about this sometimes too, like looking at different like moods or aspects of my personality as inhabiting these different characters when Picard calls all of his bridge officers for counsel. And how it's like none of them are really wrong per se. It's here's my perspective given me, my experience, me, right? Everything. And that he just takes all of those different perspectives, even the ones that are like, like, Captain, you're making a mistake, right? And just notes them. And not in a shitty, like, your objection is noted, typically. Not in a shitty way. But in a you sometimes even pull someone aside and be like, like, number one, I agree with you. But blah, 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 this is why I have to make this decision. He doesn't usually bother doing that because he's the captain. But I mean,
actually, I was going to say, if I remember Next Gen correctly, there are only ever 2 times where someone has one of those conversations that's like, bring your disputes to me privately. Do not air them in front of the crew. From the captain to number one, and neither of them are Picard interacting with Riker. One of them is Commander Jellicoe. When there's the episode where Picard gets sent on the Cardassian mission and he gets captured and they torture him, the Four Lights stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
during that, Commander Jellicoe takes command of the Enterprise, and Riker basically gives him a little bit of lip, and Jellicoe puts him in line. Because Jellicoe, despite being a hard ass, was actually a really well written character. The other one is when Data takes command of the ship, and Worf acts as his second in command.
Yes.
Because they have a great thing where Worf does the whole "I'm being overly aggressive" thing.
Right.
And then Data chides him, and Worf immediately is like, I cannot believe I have done something so dishonorable. And
Worf is so
all that stuff.
great.
He's
because he's
fantastic
such a
in DS9. Oh my god.
He's over and over. He's such a, and I love his. I keep talking about this. This is the thing I talk about most. I think the dynamic between him and Picard of them being able to drop their roles and switch their orientation in terms of who is in charge.
right. Like when he tells Picard to be quiet in the
and
in
there's
the Klingon
that. This
stuff.
is like some of the best acting I have seen in my life in that episode when Patrick Stewart does this little bit of a start. It is barely noticeable.
Yeah, you can just tell.
You
Picard
can tell
is
that he's
getting
like
ready to
I'm your
react
fucking.
and
He's like he's like at ease, Lieutenant, right?
Yeah.
But then it's the this
Then
is
he
why
realizes,
I call it
I'm
mindfulness
in a
in
different
space.
role now.
Yes.
I have to.
This is why I call it mindfulness in space, and that Star Trek and Star Wars are much closer thematically than people like to admit.
Oh,
They're both about being where you are.
Yeah,
and
although I
responding
would
to
say
it
with
is-
Star Wars, the problem is that instead of focusing on human potential like Star Trek does,
Mhm.
Star Wars is very much about what if we had to deal with Nazis in space.
But Star Trek does it all the time too.
Well, right, but what I
Very
mean is
sad.
like it's the huge, obvious, recurring theme in all of Star Wars is the rise of fascism and its corrosive effect on everything.
This
Whereas
ties
with-
into the understanding that I have though of mindfulness practices being the thing that really is the only antidote to authoritarianism.
Totally.
Is when someone says, "Do this, you have to do it. You should do it now. This is how it's done." That
It's
you
just-
take time to go, "What's really happening right now? Is that true?"
I think the only significant temporal difference is that with Star Wars, you're dealing with that one thread the entire time, and with Star Trek,
Yeah.
you get to jump from all
Yeah.
these different stories and like
Star Trek's a more
explore.
complete exploration of mindfulness
Right.
stuff because it's more about all these different scenarios. Whereas
It's also
Star Wars
more
is
world
more
building, a lot more
Yes.
world building. Like
Yeah.
I know there's been a ton of world building in Star Wars, but Star Trek has, I mean,
Star Wars has a sort of Lord of the Rings in space kind of feel. Like it's very different environments, but it's also very
Yeah.
clearly the same environment. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
right.
Whereas Star Trek is very like their like their tech is kind of the thing that is sort of like ties the episodes together, but they go so all over the place.
Yeah, you can invent completely new stuff in Star Trek, because in Star Trek,
Because they're visiting different.
yeah, and they have a lot of frontier.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're only mapping out a small part of the Alpha Quadrant. Yeah, the Alpha Quadrant. Like they have not covered one in a quarter of the galaxy.
Right.
Whereas in Star Wars, people for the most part are spread out through the entire galaxy.
Yeah, it's kind of a
just
known
that
thing. Star Trek
Yeah.
has that exploration.
There's
aspect
like
that Star Wars kind of
mysterious
doesn't.
places outside of where everyone goes and
Yeah.
whatnot, but the implication is, yeah, there's probably still already people there. It's just that they're so far outside of the
outer rim.
reach of the Republic, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like in Star Wars you have as much options of, yeah, so we just rolled up to this planet and like physics don't work.
Right.
We don't know
yeah.
why. We're
Yeah,
gonna
the
figure it
exploration
out.
of like what's happening with time here.
Why am I being so loud?
I don't know. But yeah, the thing, one of the things that I get from Next Gen, which I haven't seen that Pixar Emotions in Your Head Separate People movie. What is it called?
Inside Out?
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh my god! Inside
But
Out's amazing.
from what I understand of it, I
Ugly
feel like a lot of
crying.
the way that it works is how I make use of sort of the structures of Next Gen in terms of having like different aspects, different emotions, different sort of emotional perception, emotional angles on things that have me think or say whatever. But having it be a mode of like I have this kind of fairly, Picard doesn't lose his temper much, he doesn't lose his cool much.
Mm-hmm.
Even the episode where he sort of joined with Dr. Crusher a little bit, and she's like, "You have no idea," and he's like, "Yeah, that's true."
There's the episode where he becomes mind melded with Sarek, and he basically sobs because he's helping Sarek compensate
Channel
for
emotions, yeah.
dementia.
Yeah, that too.
That was fucking a heartbreaking episode because it's directly saying, look at this person who, I mean, for the entirety of their existence, their logical control of their mind has been a significant core component of their experience.
Right, and now it doesn't work.
And yeah, not only that, but then they have to recruit someone else to be vulnerable in front of, to say, my brain isn't working anymore, and look at all of these terrible things I will go through. And Patrick Stewart fucking played that to the hilt.
Yeah.
He was just like screaming and crying and very believable.
His constant return to the sort of like base Picard state, I think, has really helped. Like, it's even the timing of it when I watch it, right? Like, I'll watch the bulk of that when I'm going through homelessness again, losing the housing in Arlington, right? And I'm still like unprocessed a lot of Kim stuff, right? I feel like that was a really good setup for me to head into more mindfulness stuff as like a model of like what does it feel like to really return to a sort of base state that is like that, and this sense of having that be the decider in my head. I have this bridge officer staff of, you know, anger suggests this, like fear suggests this, love suggests this, like, you know, whatever. All these different.
Inside Out is going to make a lot of sense then.
Sure. All these. Oh, well, we're
Echo.
basically at time.
Stop. Echo. Stop. Okay, good to keep going.
But yeah, so that's basically it. That I think that's helped inform a lot of stuff for me. And there's the same kind of stuff here too, where it's like seeing all these. This is the same kind of stuff I like about Watchmen, is that it's that it's very deeply like authentic characters, and each of them. I talked about this with Jared today about writing Liquid, having it not be a central character with other characters who sort of just get popped in here and there, but having it be this character has their timeline, this character has their timeline. Where do they intersect? But it's really clear that this character has their own entire life. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to me that I do that with pretty much every character of any significance at all in Liquid. Any character who does a significant
World
action,
building.
or says a significant
You're making the world live and breathe.
Yes. That's another part. That's why I want to bring in other writers and stuff. I want to have a lot of the construction of this mechanically that I feel like I'm getting closer to finally doing, because I've got a sense more of, it's like been bubbling up how to do it, is that big like latticework structure of like skeletal thing with these sort of dewdrop points of like it's almost like object oriented program stuff, right? It's like this thing will take in these other events and return these other events.
Right.
The contents of it are a little bit hazy. That's the actual, meat of the episodes, right? But it's that, and what I want to do is, by the time I've got these characters well established enough and inhabited enough by different people who have like those like matching background in some way, right? Mm-hmm. That we kind of like just role play out scenes, right? The beginning of this is this. During the scene, such and such is revealed. This character at some point around, in here learns this. We don't even say when necessarily, because we explore that, right? What feels correct, what is closest to what it's getting in touch with that world, right? It's having me not be the only one who can kind of see and feel the whole thing, because there are aspects of it that are like, even if I see or feel them, it's like I know that this character hails from someplace that I can't really inhabit authentically. So I want to find someone who's got a way to be part of that and say, here's how. Not just here's how I respond, but here's how this character responds in a way that's true to this background, all this other stuff.
It's kind of like arguing about using improv roleplay to act as a writer's tool.
Something like that. I mean, there's a lot of these little vignettes that I'm writing, and a lot of the way that I construct them is a sort of improv way. Like even like Jared and I have this banter that feels like we could use this in a show sometimes, right? That kind of construction.
Sure.
But the point is there are a lot of these. It's not like I don't have any of these scenes or something. Like I write these little vignettes and I have more of them that I could put. A lot of it is that I don't know where to put some of this stuff, because it's not like a vignette. It's like elements of, it's like design elements, right? Like what does Battery look like when she teleports herself?
Can I just also complain that I think the idea that you and Jared could have moments that would be like good for a show, I think actually works. Like I am hanging out with friends and enjoying time with them. We inevitably say stuff that like that could be very amusing if it was filmed and put on camera.
Sure.
But then that also kind of makes reality TV sound just that much shittier, because they always choose to build the same narrative out of those pieces. Because it's like, if we have a really fascinating conversation that goes down some sort of a weird rabbit hole topic, and it just sort of leaves everyone going, oh, that's kind of neat. Like, you could film that, you could watch it, it could be really interesting. And someone like that that builds those kind of shows could just leave that shit on the cutting room floor because they really care about that moment 25 minutes later where somebody said something to someone else and the response they got was a little passive-aggressive and snippy.
Right.
And if you zoom in on those moments, they can build up this storyline about people being terrible to each other.
Sure.
That's pretty much my main complaint about reality television.
Well, it's a lot of why I present what I present the way I do. It's just like as much as I can without a lot
Unfiltered.
of editing, so that you can pull your own narrative out. It's like
Right.
with anything else. But anyway, we're gonna dive back into our Star Trek Discovery Marathon. Thanks for hanging out. And I haven't set up the next event thing for next week's Ask Sarah, but I swear to God, eventually people are gonna start asking questions. So if you have questions in mind and you're like, I'm not sure how to ask it, maybe you can like email it to yourself and get it next Sunday at 11:55 Pacific, and then pop on and be like, Sarah, I was wondering.
Just treat it like
Spock,
the Oracle at Delphi.
Spock or Riker?
Spock or Riker. God, that actually is a hard choice.
Join us next week. Actually, you won't be there, probably.
Yeah.
We'll see. Bye. Be safe.